The night teetered on the brink of unraveling, poised to collapse into one of those suffocating evenings, thick with simmering resentment and the bitter weight of unspoken frustration. But fate, fickle and cruel, had other plans. An unexpected twist loomed ahead, a fork in the road that could either drag me deeper into the abyss or grant me a fleeting, bitter moment of clarity. The outcome depended entirely on how much of my anger I allowed to dictate my next move. And believe me, I had more than enough to go around. By the time the clock struck 11, I was settled in the dim solitude of my living room, the only illumination spilling from a flickering floor lamp beside my chair. The weak glow barely cut through the encroaching darkness, casting restless shadows that seemed to shift with the rise and fall of my breath. Hours had slipped by unnoticed as I remained hunched over my notepad, lost in the silent ritual of writing, detached from everything beyond that small pool of light. The atmosphere suited my mood perfectly, isolated, heavy, expectant. With one leg crossed over the other, I meticulously jotted down notes, my pen etching out careful lines of thought onto the yellow paper resting on my lap. The world outside had faded, time dissolving into something distant and meaningless. Then came the sound that shattered my fragile cocoon of concentration, the abrupt chime of the doorbell. The sharp note splintered the silence, yanking me back to reality. My head snapped up, senses sharpening, the weight of exhaustion pressing against my bones as I scanned my surroundings, suddenly acutely aware of how quiet the house had become. My first thought was one of annoyance. Who in their right mind would come unannounced at this hour? It wasn't Aurora. My wife no longer cut her girls' nights short. Not anymore. Exhaling slowly, I placed my notepad on the floor, my pen rolling off the edge and disappearing into the shadows. And that's when it hit me, the deep, marrow-deep kind of fatigue that saps the very will to move. Still, I dragged myself out of the chair and made my way to the door, flipping on the hallway and porch lights as I went. Peering through the peephole, I froze. 2 police officers stood on my doorstep. Nothing good ever came from a late-night visit from the police. Bracing myself, I pulled the door open. What have I done this time? I attempted a joke, but the grim expressions on their faces extinguished any attempt at humor. This was serious. Are you Tyrone Sanchez? The older officer's voice was measured, his gaze steady. I nodded. That's me. And your wife, Aurora Sanchez? My pulse spiked. Yes. What's this about? The officer sidestepped my question. May we come in? Before I could respond, his partner shifted forward, as though expecting to be granted entry without resistance. Instinct kicked in, sharp and immediate. I stepped into his path, shaking my head firmly. No. The younger officer blinked, momentarily caught off guard. Excuse me? You heard me. No. My voice remained steady, my patience already thinning. Answer my question or leave. A tense moment stretched between us before the senior officer retreated slightly, exchanging an unreadable glance with his partner. Have you been home all evening? He asked at last. I folded my arms, locking eyes with him. Yes. And that's the last thing I'll say until you tell me what's going on. Another glance passed between them, a silent exchange I didn't like. Then finally the words fell. Your wife has been injured. She was taken to General Hospital. The impact was immediate, like a hammer to the chest. My mind stumbled over the words, struggling to process them. No, my voice came out slow, deliberate, my pulse a deafening thud in my ears. You said she was taken. Is she alive or dead? My words sharpened, escalating into a shout. Answer me, damn it. The older officer raised his hands in a placating gesture. She's in surgery. Her condition is uncertain. The breath left my lungs in a shallow gasp. A strange, hollow sensation settled in my chest, as though something vital had been knocked loose. The officers watched me carefully, their concern evident as one of them crouched beside me, murmuring quiet reassurances. Just breathe. I managed a nod, embarrassed by my own reaction. My wife had been shot. Aurora had been shot. And yet, as my thoughts coiled in the recesses of my mind, dark and venomous, I realized something unsettling. Who else besides me had wanted this to happen? Swallowing down the tangled mess of emotions, I forced out the next question. What else can you tell me? A pause. Hesitation. Then the truth unraveled before me. each word a jagged blade. Your wife was at a motel with another man. The words hung in the air like poison. His wife found them. We believe she knocked on the door. And when he answered, she opened fire. A brief pause. She emptied nearly an entire clip into him before turning the gun on your wife. I stared unblinking. She's not a great shot, thankfully, the officer added. Some bullets missed. Others didn't. The man didn't make it. Your wife might. A suffocating weight pressed down on me. My thoughts swirled, fragmented and sharp-edged. So you're here to see if I had anything to do with it, I said flatly. The officers remained unreadable. We know who pulled the trigger, the older one admitted. But we have to rule out any accomplices. And we need to ensure your wife's safety when she returns home. A bitter laugh escaped me. She's been perfectly safe here. I don't see why that would change now. Their skeptical looks didn't go unnoticed. I reached for an envelope resting on the nearby chair. And the younger officer tensed, his hand twitching toward his holster. Relax, I muttered, holding it up. Just paper. I passed it to them. Inside were photographs. Evidence my lawyer had given me earlier that day. A private investigator had captured Aurora's affair in excruciating detail. The senior officer sifted through the images, his expression unreadable. So who was he? I asked. The younger cop let out a low whistle. Damn, they looked different before the bullet holes. His partner shot him a sharp look before turning back to me. Just to be clear, don't do anything stupid when your wife comes home. I shut the door behind them without another word. Alone again, I switched off the lights and collapsed into my chair, the night pressing down on me like a lead weight. My wife, my cheating wife, had been shot. And yet, despite everything, I had never wished for her death. I had only wanted her to live long enough to regret her choices. Now even that seemed uncertain. My gaze fell to the abandoned notepad. Notes from my divorce. At the time, they had been nothing more than a distraction. An attempt to drown out the gnawing doubts that had plagued me for weeks. Why had she done this? Was I not enough? Or was something broken inside her? None of that mattered anymore. Her betrayal had dragged me into a nightmare, casting me as a suspect in a crime I had no part in. Realizing what needed to be done, I reached for my phone and dialed my lawyer. She picked up on the fourth ring, her tone sharp and impatient. This better be good, or I'm charging you double. I need a criminal defense attorney. A pause. Then her voice shifted, turning cool and precise. What did you do? Nothing, I said. But someone else did. The cops just left my house. Silence. Then her response steel-edged. Convince me you weren't involved. I wasn't. I swallowed hard. But there's no link between me and this mess. Another long breath. All right. Do you know where she is? My stomach twisted. Probably at the station. The shooting happened locally. Okay, she said. I'll handle it. And just like that, my night had only begun. The weight of the night still clung to me as I ended the call, her words lingering in my mind. Believe me, I feel awful too. But this isn't your fault. Everything will fall into place. Do you understand? Yes, I had replied almost on instinct. Good. Handle what you need to, but be smart. As the line went dead, I found myself staring at my phone. Did I just say yes, ma'am? Why did she always make me feel like a child? And why did it work? None of it mattered. She had given me clarity when I was drowning in chaos, guiding me when I felt utterly lost. Now it was up to me to prove that I could manage this. I stepped into the shower, letting the hot water wash away the exhaustion clinging to my skin. A few weeks ago, I wouldn't have hesitated to rush to Aurora's side, desperate to comfort her, to hold her hand through this ordeal. But after what she had done, the love was gone. What remained was duty, ensuring she received proper medical care, making sure the hospital had our insurance details. That was all. The divorce could come later. There was nothing left to mourn. By the time I reached the hospital, there was no longer a need to hurry. She was out of surgery, sedated since the night before. The surgeon assured me she would recover. I signed the necessary papers, left my contact information and walked away. The hospital would call if anything changed. It was past midnight when I returned home. Exhaustion pressed down on me, but sleep refused to come. My mind raced, cataloging everything that needed to be done. Most of it could wait, but one thing could not. I had to call her parents. I stared at my phone, dreading the conversation. As much as I wanted to put it off, I knew I would never forgive myself if something went wrong, and they never got the chance to see her. They had always treated me like family. They deserved to know. With a deep breath, I dialed. The groggy voice on the other end was laced with irritation. Hello? Do you know what time it is? I know, Joe, but this couldn't wait. Aurora's been hurt. She's in General Hospital. There was a long silence, as though he needed a moment to register my words. When he finally spoke, his voice was cautious. Hurt? What do you mean? I exhaled slowly, steadying myself. Joe, she was shot. Her lover's wife pulled the trigger. What? His voice sharpened. What the hell are you talking about? Are you drunk? I'm not drunk, Joe. The police told me what happened. I've seen her. She's out of surgery, and they say she'll recover. She's sedated now, so there's no point in coming tonight. I just wanted you to know. A sharp intake of breath. Then disbelief. You're not with her? No. I'm at home. Shouldn't you be there? I clenched my jaw. Joe, did you hear me? She was shot. By her lover's wife. That's insane. Aurora wouldn't, she doesn't have a lover. She did, I said, my voice hollow. He's dead now. She survived. Another stretch of silence. Then the muffled sound of him explaining the situation to his wife, Mary. When he came back, his voice was heavier, laced with something between grief and anger. Are you sure? About the affair or the shooting? Both. Yes, Joe. I suspected something weeks ago. Hired someone to investigate. I have photos, transcripts, proof. I knew before the police even called. It's all true. Another long pause. Then, what are you going to do? I've already filed for divorce. A sharp exhale. Tyrone, can't you forgive her? She's been shot. She'll need you. I closed my eyes, the weight of it pressing down on me. I wanted to forgive her, Joe. But she made her choice. That's all there is to it. That's it. His voice cracked. Just like that. Yeah. I'll make sure she gets through this, but the lawyers will handle the rest. The affair was bad enough, but the lies, the deceit. It was flawless. I never saw it coming. His voice was quieter now, as if some part of him had already known. What made you suspicious? She pulled away. Stopped doing things with me. Always had plans that didn't involve me. I hired someone to find out why. Once I had proof, my decision was made. A broken whisper. We wanted grandkids. A lump formed in my throat. I know. I'm sorry, Joe. Truly. A pause. Then his voice softened. Can I ask you something? I braced myself, expecting him to plead with me to reconsider. But instead he surprised me. Don't disappear. Mary and I think of you as the son we never had. Even if you divorce Aurora, we don't want to lose you. For the first time since this nightmare began, my vision blurred with tears. I swallowed hard. I love you both. I promise I won't disappear. We ended the call. I barely made it to the bed before exhaustion finally claimed me. When she saw me, her fury ignited like wildfire. You monster. You heartless bastard. You killed him, didn't you? You murdered Andrew. So much for her earlier reassurances. Her empty words about it being meaningless shattered the moment she saw me. 2 nurses rushed in, shielding her from me, while nearby orderlies tensed, ready to intervene. To them, I must have seemed dangerous. I met her gaze, my expression cold and unflinching. No, I said, my voice sharp, void of emotion. His wife did it. Maybe he got sloppy, or maybe she was just smarter than I was. Shock drained the rage from her face. She sank back against the hospital bed, her defiance crumbling into tears. Before long, I was asked to leave. I didn't resist. As I walked down the sterile hallway, only one thought circled my mind. Had I ever really known her? What became clear, though, was that she had never understood me. At the elevator, 2 security guards blocked my path. Sir, one of them started. We need to talk. I met their gazes, unflinching. No, you don't. The police have already cleared me. I won't let the baseless accusations of a lying adulteress justify harassment. If you disagree, call the police. I'll talk to them again. But if you put your hands on me, I'll see you in court. They hesitated, then stepped aside. I walked into the elevator and left. That was the last time I had trouble with the authorities. Aurora did everything she could to have charges pressed against me. But the truth was irrefutable. The shooter had been caught in the act, standing over Andrew's corpse, confessing all the way to the station. There was no loophole to exploit. My lawyer arranged for Addison Peterson to be committed to a psychiatric institution instead of prison. To this day, I question whether there's much of a difference. I visit her sometimes. Each time, I'm struck by her clarity. On one visit she smirked and said, "Think you could sneak me a hacksaw and a box of chocolates?" That was the moment I knew. She was saner than anyone realized. The divorce settled without excess drama. Aurora didn't want me, but she wanted my money. In the end she got half our assets, but no alimony. The judge had been firm. "You have a job, Mrs. Sanchez. You can support yourself." Looking back, it's not Aurora I remember most. It's the lawyer who kept me on track. The ex-relatives who remained my friends. And the judge who saw through the noise. As for Aurora, she's nothing more than an echo of someone I used to know.